Now it's time in that time of the week where we review some of the big headlines of the past few days. And a quick reminder, first of all, of the way we covered them here at the BBC.
He came into the White House with a pro-business agenda, but events this week have caused the business community in America to distance themselves from Donald Trump.
The UK says it wants an unprecedented solution for the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. But is that idea workable?
The important consideration is that it is the economic considerations that take precedence and that the political considerations do not interfere with what are logical and sensible business solutions.
Is it okay for white people to use black emojis and GIFs?
In the real world and in online, we have a bit more responsibility as a majority white country in some ways to be more respectful.
Our contributors this week, Gina Martin-Adams is Chief US Equity Strategist at Bloomberg Intelligence. She's in New York. And with me in the studio here in London, Nina Trentman of the Wall Street Journal.
I think that this is a continuation of a trend that's been going on all year, frankly. If you go all the way back into the February-March period, we started to see business leaders get a little bit frustrated with the administration. And I think this is hopefully the crescendo of that frustration. I mean, I say hopefully because it's obviously created a bit of market turmoil. What I think is really interesting about this is not only has the business community become more frustrated with the administration, but the investment community has as well. You know, unfortunately, it's now become a lot more. And culturally, I think that there are a lot of questions that have come up over the last few weeks that we're going to have to contend with nationally. But in terms of my purview, which is the U.S. equity market, this is a continuation of a longer-term trend of general frustration, growing disbelief that really much will get accomplished as promised in on the campaign trail.
Nina Trentman, your take on that?
Yeah, I can definitely agree. Like what I hear from people that I'm interviewing in the US and also here in Europe is, of course, that executives are saying, to be honest, we were quite confident that there would be a push in terms of tax reform and also pushing out through other reforms. And so far, we haven't really seen a major breakthrough. And so, of course, it's also interesting that, like, now this week, quite a number of American CEOs took the chance to, like, reduce risk in terms of them stepping back from the two councils and actually saying, to be honest, we don't really know what Mr. Trump is going to say anytime going forward, and so we'll just step aside and not to be associated with anything that he's going to say in the future, and that could then have a negative impact on our companies, us personally as chief executives, and also, of course, the share price of our companies. So it's quite a logical step, I think, from a risk management point of view.
Let's move forward and talk about the prospects for a hard border or a soft border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland as part of the UK. And Nina, here in London, as you watch this discussion begin, frankly, because we don't know how the Europeans are going to respond to this, it's looking difficult to accept that a soft border can be compatible with a hard Brexit.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because, of course, it's in the end, at least it appears to me that that's one of the issues that, of course, last year when people were campaigning for Brexit, like Northern Ireland was sometimes mentioned, but it was not really high on the agenda. And this whole question of, like, how do you make sure that in the end, if there's a border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, how do you keep it as open as possible? Because you don't want to put additional frictions into trade and you don't want to endanger the peace process. But then also, how do you make sure that you're explaining to the EU that it's in the end not a backdoor into the EU that you're creating by having an open border? So, to be honest, what I've heard this week so far, I've spoken to Irish entrepreneurs yesterday, and they weren't really that convinced because it's still relatively unclear how this would look in practice.
How closely is this being followed in the US, Gina?
You know, unfortunately, the US market participants have had a lot of news to absorb over the last couple of weeks. I mean, if you think about just the general geopolitical environment, a week ago we were talking about potential nuclear action in North Korea, and that changed to the Charlottesville actions over the weekend. It's been a bit
sounds like
overshadowed.
you're suggesting they might have bigger fish to worry about.
Yeah, it's just been a bit overshadowed by other news.
Let's do one more quick headline about emojis, and I know X% of our listeners are going to go, yeah, whatever. Should we care about this stuff, or is it yet another micro representation, Gina, of the cultural divisions that we have to face are with us?
I think the latter is a pretty good description of the emoji discussion. My exposure to emojis is pretty limited in my role. It's limited to my interactions with my children.
Okay, Nina?
Now that this debate came about, I've actually been looking at my emoji use, and I was going through my messages, and I haven't found a single one where I was like using a black colored hand rather than a white colored hand. So I think for me, I was not aware of this issue at all. But I guess, to be honest, it's maybe good that we're talking about it, but I'm not necessarily sure what the consequence should be, rather other than us thinking about it.
Nina Trentman of the Wall Street Journal and Gina Adams at Bloomberg. Our thanks to both. That's it for this edition.